After a seasoned career decorated with 12 Constructors' Championships, Adrian Newey is embarking on a new journey from 2025 onwards, as he's set to make a new history with Aston Martin and Honda once these two join forces under the new regulations. However, one of the biggest mysteries is why the Brit's mastermind decided to call it quits on his time with Red Bull, as he's been one of the longest standing members of the Austrian team. Obviously, there's a lot of drama revolving around his move, and now he's finally opened up about why the situation has reached this level. The Formula One world might never greet another Adrian Newey, but the 65-year-old engineer has decided that his time is not up and he wants to spend more time within the circles of Formula One. This is something he stressed out as soon as his decision to leave Red Bull became public, stating that the brain is like a muscle and if you don't train it, you'll lose the function of it. But it was initially believed that Adrian Newey wanted a more sit-back and relaxed role within the new team that he would choose. This is why Ferrari was one of the frontrunners to sign him, as Newey was seen visiting the Maranello factory on many occasions. And after the negotiations with Aston Martin have unfolded down the way they did, we now understand the real reason behind his departure from Red Bull. What many tend to overlook is the fact that Newey wasn't very much involved in the engineering process in Red Bull in the past couple of years. Yes, he was very important when it comes to the first car of the new regulations, the RB18. But ever since then, the team principal of Red Bull, Christian Horner, has decided to give him a role that's more focused outside of their F1 program, which was the hypercar project, the RB17. It's not that Newey didn't enjoy this venture in his career, quite the contrary, he loved the fact that he was involved in such a project. But his primary goal is Formula One, and the fact that he was more and more distanced from it has gone to show that Red Bull are ready for an era in which Newey won't play a huge role. And that scenario has come alive sooner rather than later, with Horner constantly stating that the efforts of Newey in the RB19, the most dominant car that this sport has seen, one that's won 21 out of the 22 events we went on racing last year, were minimal as he was focused more on other stuff behind closed curtains. This is something that wasn't accepted easily by Newey. And while the team is focused on heavy radicalization on the car for the 2024 season, it didn't come without its consequences. Newey stated his own concerns that there are some fundamental issues with the car, such as the cooling, that might not be fixed this year, and a couple of weeks after this statement, the Brit has announced his departure from the team. It's highly unlikely that this chronology of events is a coincidence, and it's something that's been heavily debated in Red Bull, and now Newey has finally gotten to tell his side of the story. The 65-year-old believes that Red Bull is already planning to enter a period in which he won't be present and focus more on the knowledge of Pierre Wache and Enrico Balbo. Obviously, we've seen how much the arrival of Rob Marshall has helped McLaren lift its spirits and the technical knowledge they've expressed in 2023 and 2024, and we expect the same to happen to Aston Martin as well. When talking about the reason why he's no longer part of Red Bull, I suppose I find that there comes a point where I feel I need new challenges. The team's reached the level of good maturity. It's a very mature engineering organisation as well as the rest of the team. So, in a way, I've kind of done my bit and I started to feel as if we're going a little bit stale. I think the guys also felt, perhaps, that they needed to show that they could do it on their own. So I thought, well, okay, let's give them the chance and give myself a new challenge. This is very important for the F1 world because, as I mentioned earlier in this video, Newey has changed his attitude as to what is that he properly wants from his next home. Is it a more relaxed advising role, or is it something in which he'd be more involved in the decision-making process? It turned out that it's the latter one, and Ferrari were unable to give him so much freedom and risk everything they've built so far, as Vasseur has been adamant that the team cannot revolve around one individual. On the other hand, Aston Martin didn't have too much to lose because they were and still are in a free fall as we speak. So nothing worse could happen to them if they joined forces with Newey, which is why they made him a technical partner as well. But Newey might have been understood wrong from Red Bull because he did want to remain at a high level position with the team, and the feeling of being stale with the Austrian squad is definitely hurting them now much more than they could imagine, because it's kind of a big coincidence that their downfall started right when he announced the departure from the team around the Miami GP weekend. When talking about this stale feeling that I mentioned earlier in this video, Newey continued, "At Red Bull, for various reasons, I was just starting to feel a bit stale. And a lot of that is my own kind of making and being and so forth. So I'm not in any sense putting blame at other people's feet for that. I got myself in that position. I just felt as if, the easy thing to do would have been just sit there at that time. Obviously, the team has struggled a bit since then, but at that time we were dominating. We dominated those previous couple of years. Just sit there, count statistics, take the money and go home in the evening. But I wouldn't have been honest with myself if I'd done that, and it would be all the wrong reasons. While it's not easy to be so much involved in the sport at such a high level, Newey has proven that anything is possible if the willpower is there. And it would be very interesting to see how the combination of him and the former director of Ferrari, Enrico Cardile, will work out at the same environment. It would also be interesting to see how the reunion of Newey and Fallows would end up, because Dan was one of his students back in Red Bull, where he served the role of the chief of aerodynamics for the Austrian team. But nevertheless, he's primary proof that not every high-profile engineer from Red Bull understands what it takes to build proper cars that could fight for the championship. This is why Newey's services are highly appreciated and valued, and of course, Red Bull has decided that he's no longer needed from their part, something that many dubbed to be a very dumb decision. Maybe the Austrian team is betting that from 2026 onwards, the aerodynamics of the car will be less and less important, and everything will revolve around the powertrain and the battery power as well, which is not far away from the truth, but to say that Newey's importance will be reduced because of the nature of the new regulations is definitely a silly thing. Another important factor here is Honda, as Newey has found a very loyal and strong partner within the Japanese manufacturer throughout their shared tenure in Red Bull. This is something that Newey's manager, Eddie Jordan, believes in, and when talking about the potential factors that push Newey to make a decision to choose another home outside of Red Bull, Jordan said, "I think Honda being a partner from 2026 will be important to Adrian because he believes having a strategic manufacturer online is crucially important. On the other hand, to have Andy Cowell in the team, who we know is a brilliant man, helps a lot. And he was the man behind all of those successes at Mercedes, a genius. And that hasn't gone unnoticed that he's obviously now in the fold with them. With Honda and with Adrian and with the people that he'll get together, I have no doubt that it's good." But if we are to look at the broader picture, we cannot throw a blind eye on what Lawrence Stroll has been doing back in Silverstone. This is the man who's been able to transform the team's facilities into top-notch, state-of-the-art factories that will help the team in their quest of bringing themselves back to the top of the game, similar to what they've shown at the beginning of 2022. The staff is there. Everything does seem to make a lot of sense to be a partner for Aston Martin, but what's missing is definitely a strong pairing of drivers, as you cannot really bet on Lance Stroll to deliver the results that would put the team in a competitive position. While Alonso is here to stay, especially now with Newey announcing that this team is his new home, the Silverstone-based squad is not stopping here, and they're aiming to land Verstappen as early as in 2026. Max Verstappen's future is also one of the most interesting topics that the Formula One world has on their hands right now. And while the Dutchman said that his priority is to make everything work within the circles of the Austrian team, he didn't deny the opportunity to leave the team as early as in 2026. The three-time world champion said that 2026 is too far away, and if Aston Martin tend to make a very promising project in front of him, then saying no to such modern offer from the team would be a very difficult thing to do. Even Helmut Marko warned us about a potential Verstappen departure sooner rather than later, and when talking about this to a greater extent, the veteran Austrian stressed that Verstappen will drive wherever he can win. And if that team is not Red Bull, then we should be prepared for an era in which the Austrian team would have to have a new number one driver, potentially putting them out of the top spot on the grid. Furthermore, Marko said, "Max drives where he can win. Aston Martin has the most modern factory. The wind tunnel will be operational next year and Honda engines will be added to that. Everything fits. And if you look at history, it's clear. Wherever Newey has gone, there's been an upward trend. I don't know why it should be any different at Aston Martin. Max knows that he can win titles with us too if we can get through this World Championship now. That's an absolute must." With all this in mind, and with Jos's comments about how Verstappen is not going to be happy with the car's behaviour if it's not fixed sooner rather than later, do you think that the Dutchman will follow suit and join Newey and Honda and Aston Martin sooner rather than later? And more importantly, do you think that Adrian was in the right to leave the toxic environment of Red Bull that saw the internal power struggle take down many engineers in a domino effect? Let us know in the comments down below.